Rain had been falling since dawn. A quiet, steady rhythm against the leaves. The roadside grass bent and soaked. The road curved gently through the wooded edge of a forgotten field, far from any town, where fog hung low and the only sound came from the soft sweep of tires on wet asphalt. There, just beyond the tree line, a shape lay still beneath a curtain of drizzle, dark, low to the ground, unmoving. At first it looked like part of the earth itself. A fallen branch, perhaps, or a cluster of leaves washed down in the rain. But as the car rounded the bend, the driver noticed something unnatural in the stillness. The shape was not debris. It was breathing, shallow, uneven, almost hidden beneath the sound of the rain. A dog. Soaked through, his fur clung to the narrow frame beneath. His sides rose and fell in short, quick bursts. He didn't raise his head when the car slowed, only shifted one paw forward, then stopped again. Thin, muddied legs folded beneath his chest, and his ribs were faintly visible, rising like fragile arches beneath the wet coat. His ears twitched once, then stilled. The car rolled to a stop several feet away. Wipers beat a slow rhythm as the man inside leaned forward, unsure. The dog didn't move. He seemed emptied, not just of strength, but of will, as if whatever had brought him this far had now faded. Then, without warning, the dog lifted his head. It was not quick or panicked, just a slow, deliberate motion. His eyes met the windscreen for only a moment. Then he stood. His legs wobbled beneath him, and he stumbled once but did not fall. The next movement was something quiet, almost unseen. He stepped forward, out of the underbrush onto the gravel shoulder. Rain streamed from his body, legs thin and unsteady. He did not bark. He did not hesitate. He simply began walking. Not down the road, not back into the trees, but straight toward the car. The man inside shifted in his seat. His hand hovered near the door handle. Still, he waited. The dog came closer, his steps slow, uncertain but determined. By the time he reached the door, he had broken into a gentle trot, a brief, wavering burst of effort like the memory of running. His body trembled as he stopped beside the driver's side. His eyes stayed low, not pleading, not afraid, just searching, tired. For a moment, the rain was the only sound between them. The man opened the door. A breath of warm air escaped the cabin. The dog flinched. Then, slowly, he lifted one paw onto the edge of the floorboard. His claws scraped against the rubber mat. He paused, looked once at the man, then climbed in. His body moved with quiet restraint, pressing into the space between the passenger seat and the dashboard. He didn't lie down. He didn't make a sound. He remained standing, legs stiff, shoulders hunched, head low. The man reached for an old flannel jacket on the back seat and gently draped it over the dog's back. "It's okay, boy," he said, voice soft, barely above a whisper. The dog didn't respond, not with a tail wag or glance, but he did not move away. Rain continued to patter on the roof. The heater began to warm the cold air inside the cabin. Still, the dog stood, eyes locked ahead. His body was shaking, not violently, but with the slow tremble of exhaustion held back too long. Beneath the faint light of the dashboard, small streaks of dried mud lined his legs. His paws were raw. Outside, the forest sighed with wind. Water pooled beneath the tires. The road ahead was empty. The man turned the key again, and the engine hummed low. He glanced once more at the dog, then gently began to pull forward. The tires rolled over wet gravel. The dog remained upright. Every few seconds his nose lifted slightly as if tasting the air for something distant. His ears, though drooping, turned briefly with the sounds outside. A kind of alertness sat beneath the fatigue, not panic, but a quiet urgency that had not yet faded. He had chosen this car, this road, this man, and now something was keeping him from resting. The man drove slowly. The dog remained silent. In the rearview mirror, the rain continued to fall behind them, covering the place where the dog had first appeared. The earth was soft there, wet with memory, and the faint print of paws was already being washed away. But the dog had not looked back. Inside the car, the warmth began to settle. The man adjusted the heater dial. The dog shifted his weight but did not sit. His eyes blinked once, slow, heavy. But still he stood. Outside, the road stretched forward through a blur of mist and water, bending gently through trees that held their silence. The drive continued in silence, marked only by the rhythmic whisper of tires passing over wet asphalt. The man kept one hand lightly on the wheel, the other resting near his lap, close enough to reach out if needed, but he didn't move. His eyes shifted between the road ahead and the dog beside him, uncertain of what to expect. The dog had not made a sound since entering the vehicle. He stood with his paws braced against the floor, the soaked flannel still draped over his back like a second skin, clinging now in folds where his body trembled. It was not the wild panic of an abandoned animal, nor was it the collapse of one rescued. There was something else in his stillness, something held tightly within. His body remained upright, though uneven, as though settling would mean letting go of something he wasn't ready to release. The muscles in his legs pulsed with small shudders, not enough to stumble but never entirely still. Outside, the trees gave way to wider fields. The mist shifted with the wind, and the road curved again. The man reached slowly toward the heater controls and turned the warmth slightly higher. The dog's ears twitched. He blinked once, then resumed his quiet watch ahead. The cabin had begun to fill with the soft scent of damp fur, old leaves, and earth. Not unpleasant, just the honest weight of wherever he'd come from. The man cracked the window slightly, letting the air carry some of it away, but not all. He didn't mind. Whatever this dog had endured, he had done it alone. The scent was not a nuisance. It was a story. When the car slowed at a bend, the dog's posture shifted. Not with fear. It was something more alert, a tilt of the head, a lift of the nose toward the cracked window. The man noticed and glanced over. The dog's body leaned ever so slightly toward the glass, his weight pressing into one paw. His tail remained still, neither tucked nor raised. Just lowered, relaxed in a way that did not suggest ease, only tiredness. The man said nothing. He eased his foot off the accelerator, letting the car roll gently forward. The dog did not turn to him. His gaze remained ahead, ears slightly lifted, nose twitching once. It was as though something beyond the road, beyond the fog and rain, had caught his attention. Something he recognized, not by sight, but by scent or memory. Still, he didn't move beyond his post. He simply waited, legs locked, body unwilling to rest. Minutes passed like this, quiet, uncertain, slow. The man considered pulling over. He looked again at the dog whose eyes blinked against the dry air now swirling faintly around them. His coat had begun to dry in patches, the matted fur curling at the ends. The flannel slipped slightly from his back and the man reached over gently to adjust it. "You don't have to stand," he murmured, his voice low, calm. The dog's eyes met him for only a second, then returned to the windscreen. No growl, no flinch, just a glance. And then stillness again. They came to a stop near a field where the trees opened wider, where the road met an old gate leaning into the grass. The man shifted the car into park. He didn't open the door. He just sat, letting the silence stretch. The dog stepped forward, pressing his nose to the edge of the dashboard now. His front paws shifted, back legs steady. He did not whine or paw at the glass. His breath left soft fog against the window pane. His ears lowered briefly, then flicked back to attention. His body swayed, caught between something, a pull neither forward nor back. Still he did not sit. The muscles in his thighs stayed taut. His ribs moved beneath his coat, slower now, more even. Something had changed. The tension in his stance no longer seemed rooted in fear. It was as if he was holding himself upright for a reason known only to him, not resisting rest, but postponing it. Outside, the rain lightened to a mist, floating rather than falling. In the field beyond, the grass leaned in one direction with the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called, brief, low, and fading. The man opened his door slowly, stepping out onto the gravel. The air was cool and clean. He walked around the front of the car and opened the passenger door. The dog turned, watching him but not startled. For a moment, they stood there. One inside, one out. The dog took one small step forward, placing both front paws on the edge of the door frame, then stopped. The man didn't gesture. He didn't coax. He waited, but the dog didn't jump down. He stepped back again, settling into the same spot, still upright, still silent. The man closed the door gently. Inside the car, the dog shifted his weight once more, adjusting for balance. Then, still again, gaze fixed ahead. And so they sat, together but apart, in the slow hush of a day not yet finished. The minutes passed slowly, marked only by the shifting hush of wind and the faint tapping of rain against metal. The road behind them had disappeared into mist, while ahead the gravel shoulder met the edge of a wide, open field. The man had not moved much in the last hour. He had spoken once or twice, gentle words with no expectation of response, then left silence to fill the space between them. The dog remained in the same place he had chosen earlier, still standing, though his weight now leaned heavier on his hind legs. His body bore the quiet posture of an animal not yet certain it could rest. Dampness clung to the longer fur along his spine, drying slowly in the warm air of the cab. Occasionally he blinked or shifted his footing, but his attention had settled on something beyond the window. His head was low, but his eyes stayed fixed on the same point in the distance, the edge of the field where the mist hung like a veil over the wet grass. The man noticed this change not by sound or motion, but by stillness, the kind that comes when all else fades from awareness. The dog's nose twitched slightly. His ears pricked but did not lift fully. Something beyond the glass had caught his attention, and he was waiting for it to return or for the right moment to go toward it. The man followed the dog's gaze. There was nothing immediately visible, just open ground, softened by the rain, lined with patches of thistle and long grass. The gate that marked the beginning of the field had long since lost its function. It hung loosely on rusted hinges, barely tethered to its post. The path beyond it was narrow and winding, the remnants of what might have once been a trail, now mostly overtaken by brush. The dog shifted his weight forward, pressing his nose against the base of the glass. A breath of fog bloomed on the window. He didn't bark or whine. He just stared. When the man opened his door, the dog didn't flinch. He only turned his head to follow him, eyes steady. Outside, the air had cooled. The rain had thinned to mist, falling light and directionless, barely more than dew. The man walked slowly around the front of the car, his boots soft against the gravel. He paused at the passenger side, then opened the door without words. The dog stepped forward, one paw at a time, as though measuring the ground beyond. When he reached the threshold, he paused again, his nose lifted slightly, drawing in the scent of the wind. Then he jumped down. His landing was quiet and unsteady, but determined. He walked ahead a few paces, then stopped, waiting. The man fell into step behind him. The field absorbed sound. Each footfall was softened by the sponge of wet earth beneath. The dog moved with more certainty now, his gait uneven but purposeful. He followed no visible trail, yet he did not stray. His nose stayed low, and occasionally he would stop to press it into the ground, lingering for just a moment before moving forward again. The man kept his distance, not from fear, but out of respect. He understood now that the dog was not lost. He had come from somewhere. He was not seeking shelter. He was seeking something else. They passed a patch of alder saplings, their branches bowed under the weight of moisture. Beneath them, the dog paused. The man slowed behind him and noticed the first clear sign, a paw print pressed deep into the mud. It was older, the edges softened by rain, but still visible. A second print followed several steps ahead, then a third, fainter than the rest. The dog walked carefully along the trail, nose brushing the ground every few steps. He showed no signs of alarm. His body language was alert but not tense. Whatever he was following was familiar, not prey, not threat, but something once close to him. The man kept walking. The field narrowed where an old ditch had once diverted water, now grown over with thick reeds. Here the path became less certain. The dog slowed again, nose sweeping wider arcs, searching. The air had grown stiller, the fog thicker. Visibility dropped, but neither of them turned back. After a few minutes, the dog stopped. His body froze in a long, lean line. One paw hovered slightly off the ground, and his ears turned forward with sudden intensity. He looked toward a dense cluster of low trees, where the grass had flattened in places. Not crushed, but gently bent, as if something had passed through carefully, quietly. The man approached, but did not speak. The dog glanced back once, then stepped forward, disappearing into the thicket. The space beyond the trees was small, more of a hollow than a clearing, a place sheltered from the wind. Fallen branches crisscrossed the ground, and the earth was dark and damp. In the center of the hollow sat something that did not belong. A wooden crate, its walls dark with water damage, one side partially collapsed. Old blankets lay inside, soaked and clinging to each other, stained with mud. The dog approached slowly. He did not sniff or pace. He stepped beside the crate and lowered his head, pressing his nose softly against the edge. Then, for the first time since they'd met, he made a sound. A low, breathy whimper, brief and broken. The man stayed at the edge of the hollow. He could see now the faint outline of another body beneath the blankets. A smaller dog, curled in on itself, unmoving. The first dog did not paw or cry. He simply stood there beside the crate, his body still as stone. The man's breath caught in his chest. The second dog was not dead, not yet. A rise and fall, slow and shallow, moved through her side. Her fur was matted and dull, and her legs were tucked tightly beneath her body. She didn't lift her head. She didn't acknowledge them. But she was alive. The first dog stepped closer, pressing his body gently along the edge of the crate. He didn't lie down. He simply stayed, watching her. The man approached slowly, kneeling just beside the broken wood. His movements were careful and measured. He reached out, touching the edge of the crate, fingers brushing against damp grain. "You're almost there," he said, his voice barely above the wind. The two dogs remained like that, close but apart, bodies quiet, breath shallow, and in the distance the mist shifted. The wind moved low across the field, rustling through the grass. The man crouched near the edge of the hollow, his breath slowed by the stillness that hung there. The dog beside the crate had stopped moving, his ribs rising with shallow effort. Rain no longer reached the ground beneath the trees. But the damp had settled into every surface. Leaves clung to the fur on the dog's legs. A tremor moved through his hindquarters, brief but visible, before fading back into the quiet. Inside the crate, the second dog did not stir. Her coat was dull and heavy, pressed flat by water and cold. The blankets beneath her were soaked through, stuck to the wood, giving off the musty smell of mildew and soil. One ear lay folded beneath her jaw. Her nose, crusted with dried mud, rested against the splintered corner of the crate, unmoving. Her body had collapsed in on itself, curled not from rest, but from slow retreat. The kind that came from days, maybe longer, without enough food, without warmth, without sound. The first dog took one step closer. He lowered his head and gently nudged the side of her face. His nose pressed softly against her cheek, then paused. When there was no response, he pulled back slightly, then tried again, this time with a bit more pressure. Not forceful, only insistent, as though repeating a gesture he'd tried before. Still, she didn't move. The man stayed where he was, his boots sunk slightly into the softened ground. He did not speak. His presence was quiet, shaped by instinct rather than decision. The air was thick with the scent of wet wood, old fur, and something beneath it all. Something still, weightless, like absence. The male dog didn't give up. He moved to the other side of the crate, stepping carefully around the collapsed slats, and nudged her flank. His body arched over hers, not in dominance, but in closeness. His tail did not wag. His ears remained pinned low, flat against the shape of his skull. A soft sound escaped his throat, a low, hollow whine, almost a breath. He stepped back, then stood over her, waiting. The man leaned forward slightly and placed one hand on the edge of the crate. The wood was swollen, soft to the touch. He could feel it giving beneath the pressure of his palm. It had been here for some time, abandoned and left to decay in this quiet patch of field no longer visited. No collar, no markings, no signs of recent human presence. He looked at the second dog more closely. Her breathing, if there was any, was too faint to see. Her body did not react to the cold, to the wet, or to the dog that stood so close. But then, almost imperceptibly, there was a twitch, a small movement in one of her hind legs, like a muscle flinching in sleep. The man blinked, uncertain. The male dog saw it too. He stepped forward again, gently circling until his shoulder brushed hers. Then he lowered his head beside her neck and stayed still, his body curved to fit the shape of her collapsed form. It was not a gesture of comfort, but of waiting. The man shifted his weight, placing one knee in the soft mud. He reached toward the crate, fingers brushing the edge of the blanket. The fabric gave easily. Beneath it, her chest moved once, a single, shallow rise. Barely enough to measure, but it was there. Carefully, the man slid the blanket away, peeling it back from her body. The fur beneath was tangled, streaked with dirt and dried blood. Her ribs were sharp under the skin. Her paws were drawn tightly under her belly as though folded in retreat. When his hand hovered near her shoulder, she didn't flinch, but the dog beside her turned his head, watching closely, eyes dark and steady. "She's still in there," the man murmured. The male dog didn't respond, but his body remained pressed close. There was no rush, no sudden movements, only the quiet rhythm of breath and rain in the distance and the weight of something fragile trying to stay alive. The man eased his pack from his shoulder and pulled out an emergency blanket. Crinkled and thin. He laid it over her slowly, shielding her from the air, then placed his jacket beside it. The ground was too soft to lift her now, too uncertain. She needed warmth first. She needed time. The male dog curled tighter around her. The man sat back and waited. His hands rested loosely over his knees. He kept his eyes on the pair of them, not intervening, only present. He could feel the damp creeping through the fabric of his jeans and the ache in his calves from kneeling, but he didn't shift. Minutes passed. The air inside the hollow held steady. A bird called from somewhere far away, its voice faint, lost against the wind. The mist had begun to lift. In the clearer light, the female dog's flank rose again, just once, but stronger this time. Her nose twitched, barely. The male dog responded by pressing his forehead softly into hers. She stirred. It was not a return, not fully, but it was a sign, a breath, a choice. The man leaned forward, placing a hand gently against the side of the crate. The female dog's eyes opened slightly, not wide, only enough to reveal a sliver of dark. She didn't focus. Her gaze drifted, then closed again. "She's still with us," he whispered. He remained by the crate, adjusting the blanket, checking her limbs for injury without disturbing her fragile calm. Her paws were cold but intact. Her breathing, though faint, had found a rhythm. She was not in pain, just distant, hovering in that space between what had been and what might be allowed next. The male dog began to lie down fully beside her now. He folded himself carefully, his legs tucked, his chest pressed to her side. His head rested along her back and his breath moved through her fur in quiet puffs. They stayed like that. No sound came from either of them, only presence, only the thin, pulsing thread of connection that had drawn him from the road, through the field, back to this place. The man stood slowly, legs stiff from stillness. He did not leave, but he stepped back, giving the dogs the space they had claimed. He glanced once at the trees, at the distant curve of the road behind them. Then he knelt once more and placed a small cloth beneath her head, lifting it just slightly from the wet wood. It would take time. She would need care, nourishment, and warmth. But at this moment, the most important thing had already happened. She was no longer alone. As the day moved toward evening, the light began to soften. The mist drifted upward, revealing more of the field beyond. Blades of grass swayed in long, slow movements, bending with the breeze. The man stayed near but silent. The dogs lay together, curled in the shelter they had known. Broken, forgotten, but still holding them. And from beneath the weight of a gray sky, something like hope began to stir. Not loud, not suddenly, but present and alive. The air inside the hollow had shifted. It was subtle, the kind of change only noticed by those who had been still for a long time. The light, once dim and cool, had warmed at the edges, brushing through the thinning mist in gold streaks. The man remained close to the ground, one hand near the blanket that covered the collapsed figure in the crate. The other rested beside him in the soil, fingers curled lightly, waiting. No movement, no noise. Just the slow, reverent pause of those holding vigil. Then, faint, almost imagined, a sound, a shallow, rasping breath, followed by the quietest exhale. The man looked to the second dog, and in that instant her chest lifted, weakly, unevenly, but with unmistakable life. He leaned closer, heart still steady, eyes soft and wide with focused attention. She was breathing. Not deep enough to clear her lungs, but steady enough to carry her a little further forward from that silent edge. The male dog stirred first. He lifted his head, ears shifting forward. He didn't make a sound, but his body shifted toward her, his posture low and cautious. A single step brought him beside the crate again. He nosed at the folds of the blanket, lightly, gently, careful not to wake her too soon. The man reached into the bag at his side and unwrapped a corner of cloth holding a syringe of warmed saline. He moved with practiced calm, brushing away debris from the thinnest stretch of skin at the dog's inner thigh. Her breathing hitched for just a second as the needle slid beneath her skin, but she did not move away. Her body remained limp, but no longer empty. The moisture would begin working slowly, giving her organs the first thread of support they'd had in days. Her ears, flattened and dark, flickered with a faint tremble. He sat back on his heels, brushing his hand against his jeans to clear the dirt. The forest around them had begun to sing in quiet tones again, the rustle of dry leaves above, the occasional bird announcing the end of rain. The wetness in the air still lingered, but the clouds had pulled apart, revealing a muted sky streaked with pale light. The male dog stepped closer to the man, almost brushing his leg. He didn't push, didn't press for attention. He simply stood, side to side with him, his flank barely touching fabric. A silent weight, carefully placed, not for comfort, but connection. The man didn't look down at first. He simply stayed still, recognizing the moment for what it was. When he finally did glance to his side, the dog was already watching him. Not directly, but in the way animals do, alert through presence rather than focus. The contact was brief. Then the dog looked back toward the crate. "She's trying," the man said, voice low, almost inaudible. The female's body shifted again, a small recoil in one paw, as if nerves were returning. Her breathing deepened, not with ease, but with rhythm. Her nose twitched, picking up the scent of her surroundings again. Mud, rain, her companion's fur close beside her. She would not rise today. Perhaps not tomorrow. But the change had begun, and for animals who had once been forgotten, movement, no matter how small, was a kind of miracle. The man reached again for the emergency blanket and adjusted it around her shoulders, covering more of her flank. The crate would not be her resting place for long. She would be carried gently, her weight shared between two hands and a folded jacket. But there was no urgency now, no need to rush. She was not fading. She was waking. The male dog shifted his paws and sat, his body angled slightly toward both the crate and the man. His posture was calm, though a faint quiver still pulsed through his front legs. When the man moved again, reaching for the canteen to soak a cloth, the dog didn't retreat. There was no fanfare, no moment of recognition or celebration, just breath, shared, steady, and real. Above them, the clouds parted further, letting through a wider ribbon of afternoon light. It moved through the trees, landing softly across the field's edge, where wild grass swayed in loose, tired circles. And in the stillness, they stayed, not as strangers, not yet as family, but joined for now by the quiet return of life.